It is I, Wacky Anime What If. I'm going to present you with What If Subaru Was Muzan's Reincarnation Part 2. I may redo Part 1 in the future because I didn't exactly like how I was very tired and sleepy and didn't do too well on it. I'm glad someone at least pointed that out. I'll probably redo that one later. I'll try to do better on this one, but remember, I'm still kind of like new to What If series. Like just doing what ifs, so it might not be the best, but I'll make sure it's not the worst. Alright, so let's continue where we left off before. Subaru and Amelia and Puck were about to walk in to the bar, but yeah, Subaru felt something was off. So he just opened the actual door, walked in first, told Amelia to wait a second. Amelia did. And once he walked in, he saw that there was Rom, who he didn't know was Rom at the time, this old man who literally was on the ground with a glass beer bottle inside of his neck, and just bleeding out to death, not dead yet. Because they got there very quickly, compared to, the first time Subaru was isekai'd to that world. They got there pretty quickly. Felt was a little injured, not completely dead, but was pretty injured, and Elsa was gone, and Felt tried to tell Subaru that, Elsa was going after him. Yeah, but Subaru already knew this, because he could sense it with Muzan's, danger sense. He could sense that she was going after him. She was bouncing off the walls, accelerating her speed, and Subaru still couldn't tell where she was, though, because he wasn't using any demon sight or any, of his demon abilities right now. But he does use his breathing technique just so he could, increase his endurance and everything. So he starts bouncing off the walls too, trying to catch after where Elsa is. But that doesn't exactly work, because Elsa, is a pro at this, and Subaru had training, yes, but Elsa's a trained assassin. So while she's bouncing around the opposite way of Subaru, she ends up cutting him about a few times, like a few cuts, about small cuts, minor cuts, about 7 of them. And they're on his arms and his chest area. Which, even though they're small, they're still actually bleeding. But Muzan just heals that. Muzan's regeneration just heals it. So, yeah, Subaru realizes he can't really just bounce around and try to, go after her. So he just stands in the middle of the room, and Amelia walks in at this time, and, is trying to provide backup. Got Puck out, was about to fire at Elsa. Elsa literally stopped, bouncing off the walls, and all of a sudden, Subaru sees her for a second, and then she just disappears. She's, right up in front of Subaru's face. Already about to slash him in the gut, but then Subaru just merely looks to the side very quickly, kicks up an actual chair, and grabs the chair, and just catches the blade with it. Just puts the chair in front of him, right where the sword was about to strike. The sword gets stuck in the actual chair leg, and then he just kicks the chair upwards, and the chair hits her in the head, hits her in the jaw, making her fly up a good bit, because that was a lot of strength in that, and the chair just breaks. And he just grabs the chair leg and stabs her right in the gut with it. That causes Elsa to move backwards, because Elsa registered that Subaru's quite the threat. And while she's going backwards, Puck is already freezing the ground, which ends up catching her heel. So she, breaks off the heel and starts, running around trying to avoid all the ice, but she's unbalanced because she didn't, get any of the ice and, replace the heel with it. She didn't do that because it was literally happened too quickly for her. So she's bouncing around unevenly, kind of, really unbalanced. So occasionally she would fall a little bit or falter. That's all Super really needed, because once she did that, he would just immediately punch the shit out of her. He's using his breathing style, but he doesn't want to use the death breathing style. Which, yes, I probably changed the actual name, but someone in the comments literally had a better name. Death Breathing Style. He didn't want to use the Death Breathing Style because if he uses it for too long, it starts decaying him. Not just his enemy. It decays him too. And he still has this wooden sword on his back, which he does use, yes. But he doesn't see a use to use it against Elsa currently, considering there's multiple combatants, and Elsa doesn't really seem that strong from what he's currently seeing. But then Elsa just starts picking up the pace, and he literally cannot see her at all. He's like, I should have probably used the fucking Death Breathing Style, and just yells at Amelia to freeze the entire floor. And she doesn't want to do this because, Rom and Felt are on the floor, and they'd probably get damaged by this too. And then he just says, you know what, I'll just go ahead and just get them to the top floor. So he just quickly goes over, picks up Rom and Felt, jumps upwards, and Amelia freezes the floor right where, Elsa just was about to get back down to the ground so she can, maneuver off the walls again. Right when she does this, the floor freezes, her leg is stuck, and she really cannot move currently. And she's getting slowly freezed, but she ends up breaking out of this with sheer strength, and she just breaks the other heel. So now she has more balanced actual footing. So now she's going after the long-range attacker, noticing, well, if I can't really go after the main damage dealer, I might as well go after the nuisance. Because if I go after Subaru, because she knows his name because Amelia said Subaru at some point. So, yeah. She goes after Amelia, trying to swipe at her, but that was intercepted by Subaru, who literally put Rom and Felt at the top of the actual, the top floor, jumped down, and just straight up bitch slapped Elsa to the side. And she flew towards the bar. She flew directly towards that bar. Fucking everything got destroyed in that bar. Elsa ended up trying to get back up, but before she could get up, Subaru was right in front of her and grabbed her by the throat and started choking her with just one hand. And then he ends up talking to Muzan in his head and says, what should I do? Should I, impale her, or should I just use my death breathing? He asked this because he knows there's a, limit to his death breathing. He can't use it for too long or, such a huge duration, or his stamina will decrease, and he could end up decaying himself, kind of like how Shigaraki does. Even though it's fog, the thing is, if he actually inhales his own breathing, which is more dangerous for him because it's fog, and he has to use the breathing technique to use it. So if he breathes in his own fog, he's decaying himself. So, yeah, he's kind of fucked if he uses it. So Muzan just says, how about this, just use my demon power, just, turn your fingertips a little bit longer and just impale her. So he does that, and he's still choking her, just so you know. And Amelia's watching in horror, and just tells, Subaru to put her down. And Subaru's like, you know that she's going to try to kill us if I do this, correct? And Amelia just, tries to tell him that they should give her to the guards and stuff. And then he's like, do you think the guards will really be able to contain her? She bounced off the walls like a madman, and, he's still strangling her. And she really can't do anything. She's losing too much oxygen. But she does do one thing that caught Subaru off guard. She reaches in the back of her actual cloak, and she grabs the second knife that she had, the second, sword knife thing, and she cuts off Subaru's arm. And Subaru isn't really in that much of a shock that this happened, but Amelia is just crying and stuff, saying, Subaru, your arm! And then he's like, oh, I can just reattach it or just regrow it. And that kind of confused Amelia, and Amelia thought that maybe because of blood loss, he was going insane. And then he just picks up his arm that was severed, and he just places it right towards where the stump in his arm was. And literally, the stump in his arm, blood starts coming out of it, and then it just starts forming these little blood whip things inside of his blood. They come out, and they just grab his arm and reattach it. And then they start sewing the arm back together. And just so you know, Elsa's watching this and is very fucking creeped out. Because she thought that he was just human. Not no damn monster. So she's about to try to bolt out. But yeah, Subaru wasn't not going to let that slide. So he decides, you know what, I'm just going to activate my death breathing. So he tells Amelia and Felt to please, block your breathing. Don't breathe anything in, what I'm about to do. And they don't know what he's, saying, what he means by that, but they do it anyway. And then he also says, make sure you block Rom's, breathing real quick, and Puck might want to go back inside of the crystal, just so you know. You just desummon him. Which, she does this, and Amelia is still confused, and so is everyone else. Hell, even Elsa was confused, and she's just running away. So, Subaru just breathes in slowly and feels the whole connection to his breathing style. And then he pulls out his wooden sword, and it gets enveloped in some dark smoke. And then he says, first style. Death Hurricane. He slashes 7 times, and those 7 times completely make an entire air pressure that just warps around into an actual hurricane style. And they start heading towards where Elsa was, and then he says, now disperse. Right when they're around Elsa, getting closer to her, she was about to get out of the window, just so you know. Out of the front window where the door was. Yeah, that did not happen in time. Because once he said disperse, all of those tornadoes literally just exploded. And the fog just came out everywhere. And Elsa did inhale some, but she was still running though. Her innards were decaying, but if everyone knows this from, ReZero on the 2nd season, or 3rd season, I forgot which season, or if there was a 3rd season. Elsa's a vampire. I'm sorry, spoiler warnings, I should have said that. I'll put that in the actual description, okay? So, yeah. She's running in pain, though, and she's running out of the slum. She runs into the woods, and Elsa is just panting everywhere, like a whole panting mess, and throwing up black blood. And her eyes are completely pouring out with just black blood. The blood is literally decaying. She's decaying from the inside, and her skin is starting to peel off. But it's regenerating at the same time. So it's going to take her a while to heal, but she does still escape through the woods. And, yeah, just so you know, Subaru and Amelia and Felt and Rom are still in the bar. And they didn't call Reinhardt because, well, honestly, it was over way too quick for, Subaru to ask Felt to, get out and go to Reinhardt. And plus, it didn't even cross his mind because he didn't know who Reinhardt was. But, Amelia told him about a person that was called Reinhardt that was very strong. Though he honestly just doesn't believe it. He's kind of arrogant. He thinks that he's pretty much the strongest because, he has Muzan. So, he goes up towards Amelia and says, yeah, about that place to stay. Yeah, I'm gonna need that, very soon. And also, just so you know, before you say, wait, how about the fog? Isn't it still there? No. When he said disperse, it did disperse. But the thing, it only disperses for a certain duration. So it's 2 minutes or so. Once it disperses, it's out for 2 minutes and then just fades away. Okay? So, yeah. Asked Amelia, where's the actual place to stay at again? And she's like, still in shock. And then Subaru's like, okay, she's all shocked. I'm just gonna go get your stigma back from, the kid up there. Points at Felt, and Felt's like, hell no, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Felt is trying to, bolt away, but Subaru already is, right behind her. And she looks downwards and saw that he was on the first floor. How did she get to the second floor that quick? Is what she's wondering. Until she gets neck chopped by Subaru, and Subaru just takes the actual stigma out of her pocket and keeps it in his hand, and then sees, Rom on the ground, still bleeding out, and he's, holding his hand out and stuff, in pain, and then Subaru literally just heals him with some demon blood, and demon blood can heal now, because all the abilities kind of evolved of Muzan. Muzan's ability is mostly evolved. Or variously different, because Muzan's in a human host. Okay? If you don't like my explanation, I'll try to make a different one sometime later. But anyway, yeah, Amelia saw that he was at the second floor, and noticed that he was extremely powerful, did not think that he was that powerful. Because, yeah, he knocked out some thugs, but she figured she could do that too, so not that much of a difference. But she knows that she could not have taken on Elsa. Definitely not. And yes, he might have had some backup, but it was mostly just him. And she knew this. So did Puck, who was inside the crystal. So Subaru jumped down, had Felt Felt in his hand, and said, should we take her to the police? And Amelia said, what's a police? And he said, oh yeah, forgot, different world. The authority figures, I guess? And he's like, you mean the knights? Yeah, that's what I meant to say, is what Subaru says. So they, contemplated what to do, and Reinhardt walks in because there was a huge noise disturbance. And Reinhardt just busts down the door and walks in. And then Subaru thinks that this is another enemy, so he's about to attack. And then Amelia says, no, that's Reinhardt. That's Reinhardt, the one I was telling you about before. And then Reinhardt's like, who's this guy? And I thought I heard reports about multiple noises coming from here, mostly a battle that was happening. And then Subaru said, oh yeah, some psychotic, sadistic bitch just, tried to kill everyone here. Yeah, we were just here trying to get the Sigma back from this bride over there. Just points towards Felt. And then Reinhardt just takes Felt and just, sees that Felt has the authority to be, in this election as a candidate. So she takes off of Felt and's like, I'm going to take this lolly with me. And he's like, okay. Well, knights, there's a pedophile named Reinhardt. And then he's like, not in that way, you sicko. And then he just bolts out the door. And then he's like, hey, are you going to fix that door? I mean, it belongs to that guy over there. And Reinhardt's already gone. Amelia is looking at Subaru, still in shock about what he did before, and also kind of chuckled when when Reinhardt said taking the lolly with him, and Subaru said, knights? Nah. She was still chuckling from that. A little. But she, honors her promise and takes Subaru, and they actually get out of the bar. And when they get out of the bar, they start walking down the slums. They start talking. She says, alright, so can you tell me who this Muzan person is? And then he says, yeah, that's going to be a long story, and I prefer not to tell you currently. Actually, I prefer not to tell you at all, actually. Because then you'll think I'm crazy or something, and if you tell your benefactor, they're probably going to think that I'm some sort of nut job or something else. And I don't want them trying to assassinate me or something, because they think I'm some type of creepo or weirdo or some type of freak. And then, Amelia was kind of disheartened about this, but didn't want to pry any further because of what Subaru just said. So, yeah, just to tell you this, Subaru does not have a crush on Amelia. I'm going to say this. Return by Death is inside Subaru, but it's scared of Muzan. So it doesn't really, whenever Subaru says he can return by death, nothing really happens to him. Because Muzan literally just walks up towards Sadalo, because this is what happened. He also told, Amelia that he could return by death. All of a sudden, Sadala tried to, have the shadow hands come out and grab his heart. No. And the mind, the soul, Muzan literally just walked up towards the corner where Sadala was in and just bit smacked her. Was like, bad, whatever you are. And then, Sadala just completely stopped. Because that slap hurt a lot. It hurt so much that it went to her actual real life body in ReZero, and she could still feel the smack. Because she put part of her soul into Return by Death. That's the reason why it's so endless, is what I'm going to say in this What If. Alright, so back to this. So once he tells Amelia about Return by Death, she thinks that's a pretty cool ability. She doesn't exactly believe him that much about it. And, Subaru can tell this. And he says, oh yeah, if you couldn't believe him about this, I'm definitely not going to tell you who Muzan is. Definitely. So they just, start talking still. And they're already in a carriage now. And she already, paid to get the carriage to take them to the Roswell mansion. They're still talking. And then he looks at the actual carriage driver, who has some beast ears. And he's like, in his head, he's like, there are a lot of separate races here that I do not know. They're very interesting, though. And why every time I see anything with cat ears or, animal ears, I have the urge to pet them? Like, literally, the person in front that's driving the carriage, the actual beastman, literally just feels a chill down his spine as soon as Subaru says this in his head. And, he just looks behind and sees Subaru just staring. It's just, stare. He's just, staring. And, the beastman's, just sweating bullets. You're like, what is this man gonna try to do? And just so you know, Subaru was kind of freaking out the carriage driver, and then Amelia's like, what are you doing? Why are you staring at the carriage driver? And then he's like, well, where I'm from, I only ever really see mostly humans, so it's kind of, off-putting. Plus, every time I see cat ears, or any animal ears, I have the strange urge to pet them. And then Amelia's like, oh, that's very odd. And he's like, Subaru's like, well, how's that odd? I like animals. And then he asks, what's your favorite animal? And then Amelia's like, my favorite animal is a cat. And then Subaru's like, actually, that's my favorite animal too. And she asked, why is that your favorite animal? And then Subaru's like, because it reminds me of pussy. And then Amelia, on the inside, just doesn't know what that means, because she's pure and innocent. And Puck is inside the crystal and just fucking laughed. Just started busting out laughing. And Muzan inside Subaru's head, inside of his soul, the soulscape, was fucking laughing. Saddle was in the corner and she was laughing. And Subaru was laughing, and then, for some reason, Amelia was like, I feel like I'm out of the loop, because even the beastman that was driving the carriage was laughing. Which I'm going to name him, Jazargo. If you don't know the reference, yeah, you gotta play more video games. Jazargo was laughing, the carriage guy. They get to the Roswell mansion, and they get out of the back. They start walking up close, because they couldn't go all the way in with the carriage. Because of the gates. Yeah. Amelia just opens the gates, shows Subaru the Roswell mansion, and just so you know, Rem and Rom were at the front gate to welcome Amelia back, but they saw this one other guy, but they could sense something from him. they sensed they didn't really, like, sense the smell of the witch that much. Just a little hint of it, but not much of it. But they did sense, like demonic energy or really dark energy coming from him. They were on guard immediately. Like, no. And Subaru saw this and was like, okay, hey Amelia? And Amelia's like, yeah. Subaru's like, you sure they're not going to try to kill me? Because I see one of them has a mace out. And they like look and, like, Rim already has a mace out, just out of pure instinct. Because of how Muzan's aura is in the show. Like, just his pure aura would literally make people be on guard. Rim was already on guard, like, right when she saw him. And then, Subaru was like, yeah, young lady over there, one with the blue hair, I don't suggest swinging that at me unless you want it to get extremely damaged or broken. And I can't really say, for your well-being if you attack me. Which Rim, just so you know, knew that this man was probably telling this truth because she already knows she can't beat him. Like, she just has a sense about that. Like, just senses she cannot beat this man. So she literally just puts up her actual, ball and chain. Her mace, yeah. And Subaru's like, alright, so can I meet the house, the mansion owner? I heard his name was Roswell. And then they reluctantly brought him into the Roswell mansion, but they stared at him a lot. And Amelia also walked with Subaru. They went into Roswell's office, and Roswell, like, is in the office sweating bullets because he can sense some malevolent force. Something that literally reminded him more of the Witch of Greed, or, one of the witches. But stronger. A little bit stronger than some of them. Like, he was actually just shaking in the chair. Not from fear, but excitement. Because if he can, rope that person onto his side, that would be very good for him. But he was also thinking that could be a spy, so he was still on guard. And by the time they entered the room, yeah, Roswell saw the person, which is Subaru, and was like, you seem very strong. And very intriguing. And Subaru was like, thanks, clown guy. And then everyone, looks at him, like, did you just call him a clown? And then he's like, wait, oh, you're Roswell. I'm so sorry. It's just, from where I'm at, whenever someone has that makeup and stuff, they usually perform circus acts and stuff. Juggling, all that stuff. It's not like me trying to offend you or anything. It's just where I come from, that's usually, what happens. And, Roswell, understood this now, unlike in canon, because Subaru didn't explain what a clown, about, why he called Roswell a clown. Just was awkward. No. He just goes ahead and tells him that. And then he also says, also, if you try to kill me or get rid of me in any way, I will literally massacre all of you and your family members. And I will find everything that you love and cherish and burn it to the ground. And he says this very calmly. And Amelia has the face of pure fucking terror. So does everyone else. And then Subaru just says, just kidding. And, they try to calm down, but they're still tense. Because he released bloodlust. That literally made Roswell have the shit your pants face. So, yeah. Subaru gets situated in the mansion in his actual, room from canon. The room they gave him in canon. And he, tries to learn the language while he can. So, in his room, he's trying to learn the language. He asks Muzan a few questions, like, does he know any type of skill that can let him learn languages? And he's like, no, I do not. But you could always, ask for, get some blood from someone that knows the language, and then you could just get the memories of the language. You'll remember how to actually pronounce and do all of this and speak it more fluently. And he's like, I can speak the language, I just can't write. So he goes out of his room, and Rim and Ram are like right outside his room. They're like putting their ears to the door, and once Subaru opened the door, they both fell down on their ass. And then he was like, could you not, spy on me? I mean, if you want to, you might as well just go ahead and be in the room with me. They both just nodded. And they just, asked what he needed. And then Subaru was like, well, actually, this might sound weird, but I have an ability where I can, learn things from actual blood. So, well, not blood, but more like I can learn things if I go through someone's memory. And they're really, shocked because he could basically learn all their secrets in the mansion. And then Subaru says, no, I don't want to learn any of your bullshit secrets. I only want one memory to access, and that's how to write, because I don't know how to write in any of this language. And he tells them this. They're still on guard, and then he says, could I please borrow the actual memory of that for one of you? And then Rem literally just lets him, is like, okay, but don't go any deeper than that one memory, or I will fight you. She says fight, not kill, because she knows she can't kill him. She fucking knows this from just his aura. So Subaru literally just places his hand on Rem's head, which Rem feels a little bit of warmth from his hand, kind of blushes a little bit, but isn't really noticed. Subaru gets the memory of, Rem learning how to write and stuff. So, literally, he's just very good at writing now. He can write fluently in the language that they natively use. So he thanks them very much and, says you can ask a few questions just out of gratitude for letting me do this. So they proceed to ask him 3 questions. The first question that they wanted to ask, what is he doing here? He explains, well, you wouldn't believe me if I told you all of it, so can I just tell you the most important parts then? And they just, nodded, because they didn't want to really hear his life story or anything. So he literally just told them, well, the thing that happened was, I, appeared in town. I didn't really have that much memories of anything here, which is a complete lie, but they couldn't really tell, because Muzan was an excellent liar too. He kind of inherited that trait. But anyway, he told them, yeah, so he had no recollection of being in that town, and, was searching around trying to find clues and stuff about what happened, and nothing really came up. So went to an alley, he beat a few thugs, met Amelia, she lost her emblem, and he didn't have anywhere to say, so he just asked if, in place of any compensation, to have a place to stay, if I could find the actual emblem, the crest. Which, that explains the situation to both of them, and they're pretty much, they're believing most of this. So, the second thing that they ask is, what are your intentions? Like, basically, will you harm anyone is what their second question is. His answer was, no, I will not harm anyone unless they try to harm me first. Then I'll go after everyone they love and care about, and show no mercy at all. And I'll enjoy their suffering. And this makes both of them shiver, and their spines literally just fucking are shaking. Their entire bones, every bone in their body is shaking. Their very soul is shaking from that answer. And then they, shrug this off and ask what the third question. Why do you wear that suit and hat? And he's like, I'd like to. Plus, my friend Muzan wore this before and kept on bugging me to get it. And honestly, when I tried it, was pretty comfortable. So they asked who's Muzan, and he's like, I can't really tell you who Muzan is because, well, you used up all your questions. And the fact that if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And they, just nodded and just walked away. But they couldn't, they thought Muzan might have been like, the boss or something, his boss. And Subaru literally sensed this, and before they walked away, he said, also, he's not my boss, he's just my friend. And I'm not here as a spy, even if you don't believe me. Though, please try to kill me if you can. I'll be waiting, and I'll be delighted in your terror, fear, and pain. And they just walk away. And Subaru just goes back into his room and starts thinking about what to do next. And then Muzan says you should probably get to know the people in this actual, area, around the area, the village that's close to the Roswell mansion. And then he says, I guess so. So he opens his door, is about to, walk out of the Roswell mansion, walking down the halls. And then he actually has to use the restroom, and he notices the restroom's right beside the hall he was in, so he just opens the door, and it's the, forbidden library. And then he notices all the books, and he's very intrigued, so he just walks in, closes the door. Beatrice sees him, and then Beatrice asks a few questions. The first question, how did you get here? And he said, I tried to use the restroom, and I found this room. And then she asks, the restroom is down the hall. And then he's like, oh, okay. But I have a few questions. What is this place? And Beatrice explains, this is Forbidden Library, it's my library. And then he asks, could he read some books here later on? And Beatrice basically wasn't really annoyed with Subaru's presence, because he wasn't that hyper and stuff. So she said, sure, knock yourself out, I guess. So Muzan just, went back, opened the door, was about to walk out, and Beatrice asked one thing. She asked, are you that person? And then then Subaru says, I don't know. That's up to you. And he didn't really know what she meant, but that answer just came out of his mouth just very smoothly. Subaru didn't even know why he said this, but he just shrugged it off and walked out and closed the door. And Beatrice in the actual library was kind of happy, because he didn't say no. And if you don't know what this is, you probably haven't got caught up to ReZero in the anime. So, Muzan just goes down the hall, looks aside, sees the restroom, opens the restroom door, and, relieves himself, washes his hands, walks out, closes the door again, and then instead of using the actual front door, he just opens the window, he just chops out. Because he honestly just didn't feel like going through the front door. He thought that could be kind of boring. And then Muzan in his head is like, you don't have to be such a show-off. And then Subaru was like, well, there's no fun if you don't show off a little. And, Rim and Ram saw him jump out the window and lands. And that just confirmed their belief that he's pretty strong. So they, walk downstairs and go up towards him and ask him why he jumped out the window. And he was like, I did it because I can. I mean, wouldn't you guys do what you want to do if you could? And then they really didn't have an answer, because in their inside they already knew probably. But they also thought probably if Roswell prevented it. Then Subaru said, I'm about to go to the village. Do you guys want to come with me? And then Rem decides to go with him. Ram had some stuff to do around the mansion. So they're walking. They're about at the front gate of the Roswell mansion. Subaru just pushes the gate open. And they start walking. Rem asks a few questions. Rem asks how did he obtain this much power for him just being a human? And then Subaru said, well, I'm not exactly just human, but you'll probably find that out later, so I won't explain. And he really doesn't explain. He just explains, yeah. I can actually tell that you guys are Onis. And that actually shocked Rim a little. And she asked how, and then he said, let me just tell you I have some experience with demons. And Muzan in his head is kind of chuckling, saying, yeah, he has some experience with hanging out with me. And then Subaru just ignores Muzan. They start walking. Muzan's a little pissed, because, like, he's basically hanging out with this chick over there instead of, like, you know, hanging out with him. He's kind of jealous. He's like, my boy's done growing up. And then that's when Subaru, like, literally responds to Muzan and says, shut the fuck up. And they start chuckling a little. Subaru chuckles out loud, and Rim asks what he was chuckling about, and then Subaru immediately says, oh, I just found out a joke. I just remembered a joke from a long time ago. And Rim was about to ask Subaru to elaborate, but they were already at the village. And he sees these kids with, like, you know, crowded around this one sleeping puppy. And then Muzan tells Subaru that is not a puppy. That is not a puppy. That's some type of monster or something. I sense some very, very dark energy around it. And then, you know, Rim's about to pet the dog, and then Subaru grabs her hand and says, do not pet that dog. That is not a normal dog. And then Rim is confused about what Subaru means. So are all the kids except for the one holding the puppy. The one holding the puppy is actually kind of terrified that Subaru is figuring something out that most people could not. So he grabs the actual puppy by the neck, which wasn't actually sleeping, was waiting for someone to pet it so it could bite them. Just grabbed it by the neck, and it was trying to bite him, and then he looked into the eyes with the demon eyes, and it started whimpering. The puppy started whimpering. And then he said, if you do not show your true form, I will fucking murder you in the worst possible way. And then he threw the dog with all of his strength, and it flew backwards and started, like, hitting the ground, bouncing up, and just getting flung around backwards. And then Rem was, like, very shocked by Subaru's cruelty and, you know, tried to stop him because, well, it's just an animal, and those kids were crying. And then he said, oh yeah, it's just an animal, right? Look what it's doing now. And it transforms right in the village. And everyone literally starts seeing it, and they start panicking, starting to run. It starts trying to attack some villagers, and all Subaru does is just says, breathing style. And he pulls out his wooden sword. He keeps with him all the time. He says, breathing style. Death style. Move 1. Death Hurricane. And he made little hurricanes. Many versions of hurricanes. About the size that it would fit in your palm. Many hurricanes. And then the actual, you know, overgrown mutt looked at it and literally was about to slap it away. As soon as he touched it, it started decaying his paw a little bit. But, yeah. By the time he noticed, it was too late because he already swiped. And it got all over his paw and started infecting through his skin. But it wasn't doing too much because he has a lot of curse. Like, you know, curse magic. So that decay wasn't really affecting him too much. It was decaying him, but it wasn't really killing him. And when Subaru saw this, he was like, I guess I gotta use Muzan's power. So, all of a sudden, his actual muscles start bulking up a little bit. And he literally just gets on the ground in a running position. And Rem's asking what he's about to do. And then he's like, oh, you're about to see something amazing. And then his legs, all the muscle just goes to his legs, and he just fucking pounces. Like, you could hear a sonic boom. And then you just see him right in front of the dog. The dog's about to try to swipe at him, but before he can swipe at him, all Muzan does, all that, you know, Subaru does, is literally grow out his actual nails into actual claws, swipes at the paw that was about to hit him, and it fucking flies off. And then he grabs the dog's head and just yanks it off with ease. Like, no effort at all. And then he literally just places the giant dog head down on the ground. The dog's just bleeding out. And then he looks at the shaman girl and then says, that is the cause. We gotta go ahead and get rid of her. And then Rem is like, so that's the enemy? But it's just a kid. And then he's like, does it matter? I mean, you guys were probably gonna kill me when I was suspicious, but you had problems with killing a kid. And he says that, and Rem's like, I guess so? I guess we shouldn't hesitate. So they're about to both attack her, and all of a sudden Elsa comes out of nowhere, grabs the shaman, and just jumps away. Subaru's trying to follow, but then realizes that he could sense a lot more of those, monsters, which Rem refers to as Maw Beast, so he just says Maw Beast now. You didn't know what it was before. So, he saw the Maw Beast flooding into the actual village because one of the stones were broken, and the shaman was making them come towards her. All these Maw Beasts were there. Rem literally pulled... This is happening in daytime, like with their first visit to the village. Rem literally pulls out the actual chain and ball, and all that Subaru does is just, puts his hand in front of her and says, there's no need for you to even get involved. All I gotta say is, stay behind me, and if any black smoke appears, don't breathe it in. And tell them to evacuate, or they're probably gonna be in the splash zone. And she didn't know what he meant, but she evacuated them anyway, all the villagers, and the kids and stuff. They started running. Subaru was running towards the Maw Beasts, had claws out of his, nail claws, his claws out, started massacring them, slicing them to little bits. As soon as his actual fingertips met contact into the Maw Beast, they got ripped to shreds. One of the Maw Beasts actually managed to bite him, but that was the biggest mistake. Because as soon as it bit him, he just made his flesh absorb the Maw Beast. It was consuming the Maw Beast. All the other Maw Beasts literally just looked at him and started just saying, oh shit, in their head. They started fucking running. And all that Subaru did said this. Death breathing style. Pulled out his actual sword, says death breathing style. 2. The Grim Reaper. And then all of a sudden, right when he swings, there's a giant skull with a cloak that flies out of the blade, and it has a scythe in hand, and then it swings the scythe. Once it swings the scythe, all the trees in the area just got fucking cut in half. Everything that was in front of him got cut in half and decayed. Immediately, there was nothing left. And then Subaru looked back and saw Rem's shocked expression. And then Subaru was like, so how's that? Told you I didn't need your help. And then he just put his wooden blade on his back. But then he realized it already went to dust because he used too much energy. And it decayed the blade, so it's like, fuck. So he just threw the handle, walked up towards Rem, and said, so, are we going to go back to the Roswell Mansion? But before they could really walk to the Roswell Mansion again, while she still has a shocked expression the entire time, processing, how the fuck did this guy just take out a horde of Maw Beasts with a single attack? With a wooden sword, mind you. She's processing this. And then the villagers run up to, Subaru and ask him, we noticed that your sword was destroyed, correct? And then Subaru said, yeah, my wooden sword was destroyed. What about it? And they're shocked that he used a wooden sword and did all this. But then they say, we would like to give you our village's finest sword. They give him it, and Subaru accepts it and says, why, thank you. Also, I hope that the kids and everyone is alright. I'd like to check up on you guys if that's alright. And they nod, and they bow to him, and they walk away. They're about to go to the Roswell Mansion. They open the gates, And Roswalt is there, Rom is there, and Amelia is there, and they heard all the commotion that was happening. So they wanted, like, information. And Rim, like, walks up to them and informs them while Subaru is, like, looking around and decides he's just going to go to his room. So he just walks into the mansion, goes to his room, and outside, we're going to switch to Roswell and them's point of view. Rim is telling them Subaru used some type of weird, he did some weird breathing, and this fog of smoke surrounded his blade, his actual wooden blade, and then he just swooped all of them, like a giant skull with a cloak on it, with a cloaked body, and an actual scythe, completely fogged too, made of fog, swung, and every one of those mob beasts were incinerated. They were completely decayed and just into dust. And she also mentioned the fact that he literally just barehandedly slayed a good portion of them too. And then she also told them that he had a twisted expression when he was doing it, and a twisted smile. And they all shivered, just so you know. They're kind of scared of him, but they know he's a good person. Because he, did that for the village, so. It didn't change the fear, though. They don't suspect him of being a spy now. So, yeah, they all go to their rooms, they go to sleep. The next day, Subaru thinks about going to the Forbidden Library, and I want to end it off here. So, in the next video, he's probably going to come towards where Beatrice is in the Forbidden Library, and probably, start reading with her or something. But anyway, until then, I only did part 2 because, well, I actually do like this series. Although it wasn't as detailed in my first part, and I'm deeply sorry for that. But I am still a new YouTuber, so can't expect too much from me.